So residents of South Hanover Township really need to speak up, because those of us in the borough who will be almost more affected than many South Hanover residents, we still share a border with that. This map is super helpful, and I would take a look at it at another time if you can. The red is the industrial parcel of land. This is zoned industrial. It can be used for industrial purposes. There are zoning rules and codes that have to be followed on that parcel, but they're simply industrial codes. They're not specific to data centers or warehouses. The red that you see here, that includes these parcels of land. A parcel of land is just a piece of land. It's just a fancy way of saying a piece of land. This portion is what would be included in the ordinance. This includes residential and agricultural zoned areas. This big area outlined in yellow, along with these other outlined areas, are what HCI, the Hanover company, who is the developer, wants to use as data center sites. So you can see it's much bigger than the industrial parcel that is currently zoned for such activity. Did I get that right, Marianne? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to try, I've been working on this for days and I don't know, I'm going to try to be really clear. What's been happening in South Hanover is two things. The first thing that's been going on since last spring is them writing a data center ordinance. An ordinance is just the rules of the road when it comes to zoning and development. In Pennsylvania, you must account for all types of development. It's called fair use land, or it's a fair use policy. So South Hanover cannot say, we don't want any data centers. They would get sued and the developer would win. So we have to zone for data centers. That's a state law. South Hanover has been working on an ordinance since last spring. There was significant public pressure in the spring that really improved the ordinance. There was more pressure in June, and we got it pretty far. There's still, we'll talk about it, but there was involvement. Right now, the ordinance, as of Friday, has been sent back to the Planning Commission again. It was supposed to go for a hearing next week to be voted on. They are now sending it back to the Planning Commission. This is good news for us because it gives us an opportunity to give even more input. It also lets the developer give input, but it means that we can continue to apply pressure. So the cones are like trying to help, that's track one, is we gotta set out the cones. We have rules. We want to have rules. Then, go ahead. We have track two, which is we didn't have an ordinance, South Hanover didn't have an ordinance in place, and we got applications. So there's actually two applications for this industrial parcel. The first application is a warehouse application that was submitted in 2024. It is still on the table. Nothing has happened with it, but it's sitting there. The second application was submitted June 23rd, 2026 for a data center application and also a validity challenge with the zoning hearing board. In both cases, the warehouse and the data center, the township did not have an ordinance in place at the time of application, so the only rules that need to be followed are the zoning requirements for the industrial zone. So where there are neighbors of that property that was very upset with the warehouse because it would be 100 feet off their property because that's the industrial zoning. So there's no warehouse ordinance, there's no data center ordinance, but they have applications. So that means they're kind of off-roading. They just have to stay a little bit in the rules of whatever the industrial zoning laws are. On July 31st, the HCI, the developer, said we're pausing our zoning. We want to pause the zoning hearing board application. So there was supposed to be a hearing starting August 17th with the zoning hearing board, and that now is also on pause. We're not sure why. We will get 60-day notice when they want to it's not reactivate because the application's still there, but where they want to start proceeding with the process. I'm going to do that. So, inside of track two, there's two applications. The first is an application for actual data center. That is on just the Pennsy Quarry site, the industrial site. It is a 400 square foot data center and a almost 200 square foot 400,000 and 200,000, sorry, square foot data center, as well as a 200,000 square foot substation, electric substation. If this site is not zoned for data centers, then HCI has requested that the zoning hearing board make a determination about whether they should be able to put these here. If they are allowed, the data center can be built next to residential homes without community protections. So this is the first thing going in front of the zoning hearing board. Then they also submitted another challenge to the zoning hearing board. It's called a validity challenge. They are challenging, HCI is challenging South Hanover zoning as unconstitutional for excluding data centers and is requesting the zoning hearing board to find a determination in their favor. So, this is the industrial zone. They want all these parcels should be included, they're saying, because you guys didn't zone for data centers, we want to put them on all this property that they have under contract. If that is allowed, an additional 250 acres of farmland and residentially zoned land will be added for data centers, increasing the size to nearly 500 acres. So that's going before the zoning hearing board. We'll just take questions about the zoning hearing board. It's a complex process that I don't feel like I can explain very well without taking questions. But essentially, it's a quasi-judicial board that you come and present your case about why you should get what you want when it comes to zoning. South Hanover Township would be defending themselves against that to say whatever their defense is for why the developer shouldn't be able to do that. Okay, so the impact zone. There's maps on your table. They aren't as clear as I'd like them to be, but they show the 1 mile radius from the 2 data center buildings that are proposed. There's the blue radius is from data center 1. The red is from data center 2. Can you raise your hand if you're in one of those circles? Yeah. Yeah. If you are in the borough, if you are a borough resident, you are inside the circle. So you can see all the places that are included. This includes the Med Center. This includes all the secondary schools in Lower Dauphin. So that's that radius. If you take that out 2 miles, which really isn't that far from a data center and its noise, you are encompassing a huge amount of area. So let's talk about the 1 to 2 mile, the impacts that you can feel at 1 to 2 miles from a data center. Continuous noise can travel up to 2.5 miles. The electrical equipment and the low frequency noise from the cooling fans can be really disruptive, and you cannot do anything to stop them. They travel through windows, through doors. It's just a constant sound. The air quality can be impacted by hazardous pollutants from the generators because they do run the generators even when they're not, they have to test them. So the generators can get run and there's not actually a need to, well, they would say there's a need to run it, they're testing it, but it's not to actually provide power to the site. So the impacts are cumulative. More data center buildings means more impact. The other consideration is water. Data centers use excessive amounts of water, putting a strain on local groundwater and public water supplies. Even closed loop systems can use a lot of water despite their name. They use a lot of water actually in their utility generation, so it's like a secondary use of water. And they can also pose contamination risks to groundwater, which would be wells, and surface water, which would be the Sweatera Creek. And it can impact your property values as well. Do you mind hitting? Dauphin County, just for reference, we are in a drought watch. Everyone sees how low Swati is. I mean, under the Duke Street Bridge, that little island is huge. And our neighboring counties have a drought warning, so we can't afford for this precious resource to be consumed by data centers that aren't living and breathing things. This is just the impact zone of 6 miles out. There are impacts even 6 miles out from the data center. So you can see all the components that are included. Can you hit the next slide? There is something called a heat island effect that has been studied, where the temperature increases can affect areas up to 6 miles away. We all are going to pay for higher electric rates no matter how many miles we are from the site, and the downstream water quality can be impacted. The full health and environmental impacts of data centers are still largely unknown because they're very new to us. Okay, so track number 2. Back to that with the zoning hearing board and application. These are the impacts if that application is approved without a protective ordinance in place. There's only 100 feet setback from residential areas. There's no restrictions on generators, no limits on well water, no limits on noise, and there's no decommissioning bond. So we're very vulnerable in that situation. Track number 1, the current ordinance draft, does have some protective elements in it that have been pushed for and actually happened because people showed up. They are increased residential setbacks, noise restrictions, generator restrictions, water restrictions, a decommissioning bond, which actually a decommissioning bond is like, the supervisors like to take a lot of credit for this, but it's like revolutionary in Pennsylvania. A lot of data center ordinances do not have the decommissioning bond. What's a decommissioning bond? A decommissioning bond means that if the site is abandoned or it stops being in operation, there's a bond that has been placed that if the developer or the owner of the building needs to return the site to a neutral site. And so they need to remove all the equipment. They can't just walk away from the site and be like, oh, we don't need that anymore. That's obsolete. They need to return it to the way it was before. There's actually some editing I think we need to do the decommissioning bond, but it doesn't leave the township holding the bag for getting rid of all of the equipment. If they don't do it, then we have the bond in order to take care of it.
Is it true the bond only lasts 10 years?
I don't believe so, but I'd have to look at the actual ordinance.
It was my impression that it has a 10-year lifespan.
Okay, we can look at, can someone write that down? Okay. These are ordinance drafts improvements that we would like to see changed by the supervisor since it's been sent back to the planning commission. Removal of all residential parcels from the overlay. The overlay, which is the ordinance, should only be for the industrial park. If someone wants to come into the township and build a data center, they can do it on the industrial park. They do not need this extra acreage. They can do it here. If they want to do it, they can do it here. No one has a right to build a hyperscale data center. They have a right to build a data center, but there's different types of data centers. We would like to see that access corridors do not pass through residential development. That's what's currently on the application, and we don't think it's fair to our Wagner neighbors and our neighbors in Fox Meadow or other places that they should have to have a corridor to the site through their backyards. 40-foot height restriction, we're asking for that because they said they can do it in their application. So they can do it in their application, they can do it for us. And then annual third-party sound studies to monitor noise. There's a lot of analysis that's been done of this ordinance. There will be more on the website of things that you can consider asking for if you're not sure or you're wondering. These are just the top 4 that we pulled out. The most important is those residential areas. Okay, so you don't live in South Hanover Township, you live in Hummelstown Borough. We have limited rights as borough residents. As of last week, South Hanover Township has stopped allowing non-residents to comment. Quite frankly, I'm surprised they let me comment as long as they did. But that has been limited for us of speaking in that public meeting. Doesn't mean you can't email them or send them a letter, but we can't speak in public meeting right now. Our borough can do things. There are tools soft power that they can use to influence what is happening. In June of 2026, the borough released a statement about the process and where they felt comfortable getting involved, and they said if there's an opportunity, the borough will provide its comments to advance the interest of the residents. Then, July 21st, 2026, they released another statement that as of right now, they will not be seeking party status at the zoning hearing board, but they do stand against HCI's request, which is good. This is the first time they've put that in writing. And that the mayor, borough council, and her staff will communicate with South Hanover to assist in the zoning hearing board process. This is good because this is the first time that we've heard them definitively say that they're against that data center application. But just releasing statements demonstrates a level of influence and power that they have. So I'd like to work together with our elected officials to talk about creative ways that we can influence what is happening right across the creek from us that's going to very significantly influence our lives. Dairy Township has not released any statements, but there are residents that are going to them asking for them to seek party status at the zoning hearing board. And there is an effort from those residents if you want to connect with them. It seems like it's possible that we can pressure them to join as a party to the zoning hearing board, but we really need our municipalities to come together to fight this because we're all going to deal with the impacts of it. By the way, party status just means like you get to testify and cross-examine during the zoning hearing board. And so it just gives you a source of power and a role. So some calls to action. You can donate to the Community Coalition's legal fund. We have hired a lawyer and retained a lawyer to represent the residents. And so we are working with him when it comes to questions about the ordinance, questions about the zoning hearing board. He will represent us at the zoning hearing board if that goes back into being an active status. Please join the efforts. Any time and talents you have are really appreciated. We have lots of things that need to be covered, and we appreciate any help that you might be able to provide. Attend your municipal meeting, especially where you're a resident, and it doesn't hurt to show up at South Hanover's every once in a while. Those times are up there, and then it's also great to attend the meetings because you see the process and you actually learn a lot about how to leverage your power as an individual. Advocate for increased protections on the ordinance. That will be on the website with more detailed analysis. And talk to your neighbors and friends. And we have yard signs in the back if you want to put a yard sign in your yard. So yeah, there's a QR code for the website and the legal fund and our website. I really appreciate each of you being here. It's been a long haul. It's only going to get longer, and we need as much input and support as we can to protect our community. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it to John for Q&A.
So we're going to start Q&A. I'm going to call on people if you raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Feel free to shout out. Also, feel free to come up here if you don't feel like yelling. And guys in the back, could you turn the lights on for us for this portion? Thank you. Yes.
First off, just on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and taking the time, so thank you. Two questions, hopefully they're pretty quick. The first, and I don't know much past what was presented today, but can you briefly speak to the likelihood of the two applications? So more so application one already being restricted to an industrial zone versus application two, which is more of a stretch, I would assume, from HCI. So can you just speak to the likelihood of application one occurring at this point in time with the infrastructure, the beginning delay, versus application two?
Yeah, and also just quickly, you said you had two questions.
Yes.
What is the second one? So just we can.
The second maybe is just more of a comment. I just want to make sure, or I want to say out loud, I hope we're not trying to reinvent the wheel with the ordinances. You spoke to local PA communities that have successfully fought back. I just hope we're taking advantage of our neighbors and those that have successfully put ordinances in place that are legally sound, and I hope we're not going it alone in that sense.
I will say that we have, yes, to not reinventing the wheel. I'm on the same page with you. We have been using model ordinances. South Hanover has kind of become a model ordinance for other townships, which has been quite interesting. But Food and Water Watch, Penn Future, we were in close contact with the stewards because of the Middlesex PAX 1 data center. So yes, and that's also what's happening. If you are looking at other ordinances and see something, you're like, that's not in ours, we need to know that. The more eyes on those other ordinances, the better to let us know those pieces. And I'll let Marianne.
As far as if the application 1 will be approved, we actually don't know. The zoning hearing board, they'll listen to all the testimony and then they'll either approve it, deny it, or approve it with additional conditions. So right now we really don't know without being there. It depends on the strength of the case. The township is fighting it, the residents are fighting it. We hope all the residents who border and other parties that border the site will also fight it. As far as the validity challenge, we don't believe that will go through because South Hanover Township has kind of a catch-all section in their ordinance that says if there is a use not provided for, they will have to go to the zoning hearing board. So they can't really say that we are not allowing data centers, because if we don't allow the use, they can bring it to the zoning hearing board. So I don't think that will go through, but we don't know everything, but that's as much as we know right now.
So I'm gonna start over there.
I want to again applaud all of you for doing the work. Thank you so much. This is extremely helpful. My first question is for you, John. You did mention briefly something about the grid that Governor Shapiro has. Could you highlight the weaknesses in this grid program? You said it is not foolproof. That's the first question. Second thing, the people who are supporting and promoting data centers, they are claiming that with increased property value, it will bring in a lot of money, because a lot of townships are struggling to balance their budget because of the shortfalls, because of the funding cuts. So they're using that as one method to promote data centers. And secondly, they're saying they're going to bring in a lot of jobs. So can you speak to that, please? And then in the closed loop system, in addition to all the toxins and stuff, and it not being as closed loop as it seems to, there is also growth of a lot of dangerous bacteria that have been found. So I don't want to add that to that. And I think a little dissection of decommissioning bonds. Sorry, I just had a bunch of stuff and I don't want to take up a little time to knock everything out. Decommissioning bond, the current ordinance I think says return to neutral status. I'm not sure what neutral status means. My current understanding is neutral status, as long as you take away all the toxic stuff and machinery and equipment, but you can leave the building as is. So there's a risk that that may be like an abandoned mall building. I think we need to tweak that and make it return to greenfield status, which is different. That means bring it back to its current status with the greenery and the natural habitat. So I think we need to sort of push for that. Finally, if you don't live in South Hanover Township and you want your voice heard, find friends in South Hanover. We will speak on your behalf, right? Thank
Yes.
you.
I was the first one they said couldn't speak.
So please, South Hanover, we'll work with you guys in Hummelstown, in Dairy Township, or wherever you are in the 6-mile radius. We will be your voice. So please reach out to us. We'll friends with us. We'll come over for tea if you like. But, and lastly, we have a couple of model ordinances.
We need to keep it short. There are a lot of people that want to ask questions.
Yep. Last one. Model ordinances, have we, again, do a comparison of those model ordinances with ours at fine, where we can increase it.
So I I'm not sure everybody was able to hear that, so I'm going to repeat the top question that we got, which was about Shapiro's grid standards. What's weak about them? And a second question we got was, they say data centers are going to bring tax money, and they say they're going to bring jobs. So can we speak to that? So I'm gonna first address the grid standards thing. This is not a partisan comment because there are people on both parties, both sides of the aisle, who are currently kind of carrying water for the grid standards and voting on them in the state assembly and the state senate. The grid standards are essentially an incentive program. They're going to tie tax cuts and fast permitting to compliance with very modest environmental standards, like bringing your own power, which at this stage is sort of like an accounting dodge, they're basically committing money to bringing electricity, but that's not the same as building a power plant and putting it on the grid. So there's a degree of latency involved in any kind of bringing your own power stuff. So just top line talking point to keep things moving, the grid standards are something companies can opt into. After they opt into them and they apply, there is no accountability, there is no mechanism to ensure that they're complying with those standards. And functionally what those standards do is simply allow these companies to commit resources on paper that will not manifest tangibly in infrastructure improvements in the same time frame as these data centers are coming online. Now, in terms of the tax revenue, data centers are going to contribute tax revenue just like any use would. One of the big differences here versus a place like Virginia, developers love to talk about Loudoun County, Virginia. And they like to talk about Loudoun County, Virginia because in their mind it's a regulatory triumph because all the data centers are restricted to 800-ish acres. And they have also developed an accounting mechanism whereby they are taxing those data centers on the computer equipment inside, which is the most valuable aspect of any of these facilities. In Pennsylvania, we are not taxing data centers on the chips, on the servers, on any of that computer infrastructure, which is the most valuable, expensive piece and what these things are for. And so the most valuable aspect of any of these developments is just irrelevant for our tax base. So whenever you see developers quoting numbers, they're maybe basing it off of the tax code here in Dauphin County or in Cumberland County, what is over there, but also they're using projections derived from Virginia. And they are in fact going to contribute tax money, but is that worth the public health consequences of having diesel generators spew particulate into the air, into the water? Is it worth the data centers sucking up water? Is it worth them raising our utility bills? That's something every municipality needs to answer for themselves, but I know how I feel about that. As to the jobs, data centers will make short-term construction jobs. That's why if you look kind of at the state level, there's a lot of interest from the building trades unions from on high. No, I'm not talking about any locals or membership. I don't know how people feel about that stuff concretely. But the leadership is excited about data centers because they are making short-run construction jobs. Now, the average data center does not result in many jobs. So I'm going to talk about Middlesex for a second. Middlesex is a $15 billion project, and they are projecting 275 permanent jobs when it's done. It's 700 acres and $15 million for 275 permanent jobs, and that's not even getting into any of the calculus about how AI can affect everybody's jobs and can eliminate work. So, these are built to undermine jobs in the aggregate. The AI tools are sold as labor-saving mechanisms, and the actual facilities themselves are just 275 jobs. So, the economic development trade-off, this is not creating jobs for people in your community, this is not putting money in people's pockets that they can then spend. So it's the economic development angle is just not there for municipalities. So I'm going to take another question now. Yes?
So as far as the ordinance goes, what has entered the conversation surrounding ethical concerns about the impact, touching on your point about AI's effects on humanity's future in general. Is that something that is being addressed? Because we know, these are monstrosities. They're noisy, they affect the environment, but what they're actually being used for, they're basically running data over the AI models. They're making artificial general intelligence super intelligence. Is that something that's being discussed at the local level?
So, and I'm just going to repeat for everybody's benefit, the question was, at the local level, are municipalities, do you mean specifically South Hanover or Hummelstown?
Yeah, or generally,
Yeah.
Neighboring communities where they've already gone deploys.
So are municipalities considering the kind of broader social implications of AI when they talk about these data center facilities? Is that like a fair? Okay. So does one of you want to talk about this in the context of the area?
I don't believe that has come up in any conversations that I've heard with the supervisors. So I don't believe that that's something that they're looking at.
Yeah, so the ethical concerns about AI and like our personal belief about whether or not using AI is ethical practice, if you have those concerns about the ethical use of AI, you want to sort of take that stance against the hyperscale data centers, the best way to do that is to construct this ordinance in a way that is protective of the community and the resources. But to be responsive to your question, as Marianne said, the ethics of using AI hasn't necessarily been a part of the conversation, but it's definitely something to think about.
I would just add that it's difficult to have that conversation locally because of the PA law of fair use and that we have to zone for everything. And so it makes it really interesting because they'll just be like, okay, well, we still have to zone for data center. Like, do you know what I mean? And so it really, it hasn't gotten to that depth in any conversations that I've been in, but that doesn't mean the concerns aren't warranted.
And I would just observe in Middlesex, this comes up sometimes now that a data center is happening there. And it's always leveraged in the sense of AI is inevitable, so therefore fall in line and stop complaining about this facility. And so whatever is meaningful in that question kind of is not even raised by the people bringing it up because it's just used to silence residents. So that's what I'm seeing covered. But the next question, I saw you earlier, and then I'll move.
Mine's very simple. What's the temperature of the board of supervisors? Are they against this or are they for?
And so just to repeat for the room, how do the Board of Supervisors feel about this project and these applications?
It's mixed.
So, what happened was, it would be great to come and ask the Board of Supervisors. What I have seen over the past 9 months is there's a lot of 3-2 votes, one way or the other. There appear to be 2 supervisors that have had conversations with the developer that don't seem to have issues. There's 2 that seem to be speaking up for the residents more, and there's 1 that seems to be able to be moved, and he seems to be able to be moved by the public showing up. So yeah, it's really, it's been a journey with them, and there's a lot of feelings, I'd say. A lot of feelings, and trying to help them see that we're on their team. I'm not sure if they always see the public as on their team, and so that's been one of the biggest challenges, I would say.
Are we able to name names in the future? The what supervisors are against this for points?
So just in terms of us having an official stance on anyone, we don't want to cross over into any kind of, we don't want to make claims that aren't verifiable. So it's important, that's why, but it is important to come to these meetings because it will be very clear who's who. When you attend, or in talking, Or, yeah, great, amongst yourself, that's fine, it's just in order to maintain some integrity as we organize, we wanna be careful about making mistakes. But yeah, if you come and you talk to them, it's pretty clear.
Or stay to the end.
And also, yeah, or stay to the end, they'll talk, and as far as elections go, absolutely, this is something to keep in mind. I will say the next election is like 2028 for some of them,
2027 is Borough.
maybe 2027.
2027 is municipals, get ready.
It's
Yes.
not this year, but we can definitely just keep in mind, like, hey, these are what we want. If you don't listen to us, we might have to make some different decisions. But hopefully they will see us as an asset and they will want to work with us. Thank you for your question.
Pink shirt. Sorry, oh.
So, just kind of a question, have you been able to reach out to any other local kind of stakeholders like school boards at Lower Dalton, Danny Township, the hospital, churches like that? Would you come do a class in my church about this? We would love that.
So the question for those who couldn't hear was, have people been reaching out to other local stakeholders?
Yes, we have. We have a lot of people canvassing and going out in the community and talking to businesses. We've had people who have been meeting with township residents in Erie Township and the borough and giving them information and trying to reach to their municipalities for support. I believe that there has been some approach to Hershey Medical Center. I don't know that that was productive. The Hershey Trust did attend one of the board supervisors meetings, and it did sound like they are an interested party. So we do have that for the zoning hearing board. But all of you can continue the effort and reach out if you know someone. It's important that we share as much information with people as we can. There are still a lot of people in the area who don't know anything about this. And there's only so much that we can all do, but the more people who are sharing the information, the more the word will get out and the more will have an impact.
And I also said, if you organize a group, get your neighborhood together, somebody will come and talk to them. But you get the group together. This was just an idea in someone's head, and we came up with this. So feel free.
Yes, Annette was just saying that if you have a group that you would like us to come out and talk about this, we are more than happy to. Also, we get a lot of suggestions of people to reach out to. Those of us that are some of us are stretched very thin, so if you have an idea of someone to reach out to, please reach out to them. You can copy our email on it so that we're like looped in and we'll know. But really, quite frankly, like if you work at the Med Center, you're going to be the most effective at getting the Med Center on board. I'm not going to pull much sway. Your church, all of those places where you are a member, that is where we can really use our power as members of those organizations. Oh, our email is protectsouthhanover, PA@proton.me. It's on the website. Everything's on the website. Oh, good. Oh, yes. Okay.
Green shirt.
So sinkholes are not required to be mapped or recorded anywhere, and at my house, I can count 4 that have been built small to 2 to 3 parking spaces in the last 10 to 20 years, and one at the apartment complex behind me, literally 50 foot wide, that is drainage street. The railroad is directly behind that one. The parking spaces one was at the hill directly across from my house. Our entire town is in Union Baja Vista, the land subsidence and sinkholes. So my question is, doesn't the railroad care? But also maybe the hill people. But also I'm gonna look to see if we can maybe, if anybody else has had any problems, like get it on a map somewhere.
So for everybody in the room, the comments were, there are a bunch of sinkholes in Hummelstown Borough, and those are not recorded anywhere. It would be a good idea for people to begin recording them. So if any of you are GIS map people, sound off. And then another comment was, people should let the railroad know, because they're presumably Norfolk Southern or Amtrak is Norfolk is running right through and might have a vested interest in how this project is going to impact the land.
We do have a resident geologist who has been advising us on some things such as sinkholes and water use. That is definitely a consideration, and as we move forward with everything, we will try to get expert witnesses and even at the land planning stage, have that addressed.
Okay, other pink shirt.
So I do want to say, as many others have said, thank you for all the work that you're putting in here. I have two questions. My first is, what is the goal of this organization? To stop these data centers being built, or to make it as tolerable as possible for the residents? And I know you've already said things about we cannot put on paper something that says you're not allowed to build a data center here, but there are other ways to stop a project and simply saying no economics, which is death by racism, right? What's our goal?
And you said you had two questions. Was
Yes.
that?
The second question was, can we just have a list of the names of the individuals of that board, irrespective of their opinions? I don't know that they all.
Oh, yeah.
That's available online. I would, on the website. So,
If you read the minutes, it will reflect what they're saying. So if you look back once to the minutes.
and
And how they vote.
With the zoning hearing board, because the head of the zoning hearing board in South Hanover Township is an attorney with McNeese, and McNeese represents the developer DCI in Texas.
that's an important conflict of interest, and is precisely why everybody in this room needs to go to meetings.
So, the gentleman back there repeated a talking point that said, the head of the zoning board is an attorney at a firm called McNeese, and that firm is representing the developer, which is correct. That is a conflict of interest. However, he has recused himself, and the person who is coming in, I've heard from other people, they find her to be a reputable and fair person who cares about the environment of Hummelstown. And secondly, I don't believe that McNeese is still representing it's unclear whether or not McNeese is still representing the developer, but at this time, the head of the zoning board, who is an attorney for McNeese or was an attorney for McNeese, has recused himself, so that conflict of interest isn't present. But that's a good thing to be. That was true at one point until he recused himself. So those are the kinds of things to pay attention to. So I appreciate. Oh, okay, yeah, go for it. Okay. And we're coming back to you.
I questions front of mind.
I believe everyone here has to be understanding what's going on in Watts Township, Perry County. The same two applications that McNeese and their firm filed in South Hanover, one for the quarry and the one solidity challenge, they have also filed parallel in Watts Township, Perry County. This past Thursday night, the zoning hearing board of Watts Township, which is Duncannon, which comes at the confluence of the Susquehanna and Juniata, which they want to put them there because of the water, voted for the developer. The developer took a position that their zoning ordinance allowed warehouses. Now that's about all it said. That they did what was a warehouse was so nebulous that they didn't know. So the developer came in and said, "Well, we're just warehousing a whole bunch of computers, and we're going to call it a data center." And so The zoning hearing board of Watts Township on Thursday night, this past Thursday night, July 30th, voted for the developer. That's going to go to Perry County on the township's challenging that. And that will go to Perry County on that one. But they also filed what I call a substantive validity challenge. The second issue saying that their ordinances are so nebulous it doesn't deal with data centers. And they're asking for the same relief that it's here. They're running these in parallel. On top of which, the township below Watts Township is Carroll Township. Carroll Township borders, Route 11 in Cumberland County. Why is Carroll Township involved? Because they have made an application with PP&L to cut into the Texas Eastern gas line. They want to build a electric generating plant based on the gas there to power the data center that they're talking about.
Specific facility, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
no, this is what the developers are doing everywhere. What he described is what happened in Lancaster City with their data center. So I want to keep the conversation focused about what's going on here in Dauphin. Your question, what's the goal of this organization? Is it making these data centers bearable and diminishing their impact on residents? Is it blocking them? And I will turn that over.
That's a really good question. I want to start by saying it's a big group of people. It's 600 people, and we have intentionally, in order to allow people to participate at the level that they want to participate, we have kept it more of a grassroots organization. So I don't speak for all 600 people in our group. I would say the main goal is to protect South Hanover. So at this time, what that looks like is coming up with a robust data center ordinance for South Hanover Township in order to protect against a data center. The ordinance that we're drafting with the protections that it has leaves us more protected than having no ordinance, and it leaves us more protected than a group of people saying, well, we hate AI and we don't want any data centers. A part of protecting South Hanover is taking steps that are practical and actionable, and one of those is to draft the data ordinance, or to support the drafting of a robust data ordinance. So I hope that was responsive to your question. And then the Board of Supervisors, if you Google South Hanover Township Board of Supervisors, their names are listed there.
I thought looking at the slide said that the ordinances that you want to draft would not apply if it's already in application.
So I would add that another goal of the group is to defeat both of those applications at the zoning hearing board. That is top of mind, and that's the problem that the situation we've been put in by the way the supervisors have managed this, is now we're dealing with getting an ordinance just in case, but also fighting an actual application. The meetings are live streamed on YouTube if you want to see our friends at the Board of Supervisors, and you can see who is who.
Yes, you. Yeah, no, well, I meant
You're saving up, it's all you. Go ahead.
The specific data center that's being proposed, do you, or is there anywhere access to details of this data center? Is it like online?
So the question for everybody is, are the specific details of the data center being proposed available anywhere?
They're on our website. They were on the township's website, they were pulled down, but they are on our website. You can't find them, just email us and we will get them to you. We also have a lot of information from Right to Knows that we haven't processed, quite frankly. It's a lot of, we're getting hundreds and hundreds of pages, and we're putting out what we can when we can process it. but we have a lot of information, and so if you're looking for something and we haven't shared it yet, it's not because we don't know. It might be because we don't know. It might be that we have something that we think is related, but we haven't gotten to it yet. So anyone who wants to help read documents, we can also really use help with that and like analyzing. That's a need in the group.
Sorry. My wonderful fiance. Speaking to make sure I understand this group's purpose, first and foremost is to attempt to block the data center applications currently before South Hanover, but in the event of that failing, to curb excesses of data centers and to make them as tolerable as possible to us. Is that the proper order of operations here?
So the question was about, is the primary goal the zoning hearing board defeating that and then the ordinance? I would actually say that we have more power right now with the ordinance because it's going back to the planning commission and we can speak on that and have input on that, whereas the zoning hearing board, that application, they're on hold. There's not too much we can do besides continuing to collect expert legal witnesses. We have to wait for them to reinitiate kind of, and so we're strategizing for that, but the ordinance is really where we can do something right now.
Right here, right now.
And that's really what we've been working on since it started back in 2024, early 2024. So this has been an evolving thing, and then only just recently did they actually do the application, but we have been working on this and have made a lot of progress, I think, even since May, in getting more protections in place. But like I said, we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go.
If I may add a suggestion for the excesses that you want to try and curb, I do high performance computing. That's not AI, but similar idea of large computers in a server in a warehouse that needs cooled and maintained. My usage gets throttled per credit hour, so by the dollar, by the cent. So as I make my decisions in my laboratory research, what do I want to spend my credit usage on? That prevents me from just trying everything I want and using a whole bunch of computing power willy-nilly. Is that something that you can consider trying to add into the ordinance to throttle, again, in a worst case scenario, to make it tolerable, to throttle usage by certain times of day, by credit hour, perhaps making it too prohibitively expensive to run the data center in this area, perhaps? Something like that to, again, as a fail-safe, if the data center will be built here to try and reduce its usage.
I don't think that that's something that land use zoning would address, and that's what really we're able to address here. But if you could send us that information, it could be something that we can use maybe in a community benefit agreement or in some other way at some other time. But right now, we're kind of focused on land use and zoning. So.
Are there any, could you clarify the rights of residents of Berry Township that live within the compact zone? It seems to me one of the big problems is that townships are part of the zoning township. It means that they're I moved back to Pennsylvania after living in Pennsylvania for 3 years, and I'll tell you how compared to other states, and so possibly, so I was just wondering if there any, can Berry Township building supervisors put any pressure on South Hanover, and are they?
That's a great question. So the question was about what can Dairy Township residents do, and this lovely amalgamation of our Commonwealth that we have, all these tiny fiefdoms of townships and boroughs. And I think that's one of the things that makes us very vulnerable as a state, is that each municipality is dealing with this, and it's really actually separate. There's a whole thing at Dolphin Highlands, this Swadera Township, that all of us should also be worried about, but we're right now focused on this one. And so it is just the nature of the beast in Pennsylvania, and the fact that folks at the state level are mealy-mouthed and not doing the things that would protect us, like a 3-year moratorium or any sort of moratorium to give these municipalities relief, is a real issue. I would say Derry Township residents, do you mind if I call you out? Michelle is up here in the pink shirt. She's a Derry Township resident who is working on seeking and urging the Board of Supervisors of Derry Township to seek party status. There appear to be supervisors engaged in that process and interested in learning more, so I would highly recommend connecting with Michelle and those supervisors. The borough says this to me, is that there's nothing they can do, it's not their jurisdiction. And I continue to kind of push back on that they have tools of soft power that they can use. There are statements they can make. There are things that they can do that puts pressure, and it doesn't need to be pressure on the South Hanover Township, it needs to be on the developer. And so, there's creative ways. I'm not sure exactly what it looks like. I'd love to talk more with our borough council about creative ways. They might have contacts at the railroad. I don't know, that's total conjecture, but of ways that they can use the contacts they have to apply pressure that makes it really sticky and uncomfy for the developer to want to come here, and they just are kind of, never mind. These people are annoying. That's my goal, is to be very annoying. Annette?
Before too many people leave, can you just say about the zoning hearing board, what next important meetings? I mean, we tried to get South Hanover Township residents, thank you to the Derry and Borough residents that have come, but the next important meetings, we can't let up in this. I'm wondering if they didn't table, we don't know why they tabled this, it's not very language for why, but my husband and I are concerned that they just want us to lose interest, just get worn out, just get tired of it, I don't want to deal with that anymore. So, next important meetings, mention before more people leave.
So the next South Hanover Township meeting is Tuesday, August 11th at 6:30. And the next Hummelstown Borough meeting is next Thursday. They quite conveniently ended up on the same week. You can go August 11th and meet. We weren't expecting all this information on Friday. I had to read you the whole presentation because we found it on Friday. They were pausing. We had all these dates for you guys, and now it's kind of paused. It's really to continue to follow what is happening, emailing and attending the meetings. The next meeting is August 11th. Right now, there's just regular Board of Supervisor meetings. There was supposed to be a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow. That was canceled. So pay attention to see when the next South Hanover Planning Commission meeting will be, because it's likely that it will be, the data center ordinance will be on the agenda. We just don't know yet because that agenda's not out.
And even if you can't speak because you're not in South Hanover Township or you don't want to speak, just being there in person puts pressure on them, and it shows that there's interest and concern in the community. And even just that goes a long way. So I really encourage all of you to attend as many South Hanover Township Board of Supervisors meetings as possible if you can. Or Derry Township, or the borough, yes. Because the more people who are present and share information, the better.
I just want to give a quick anecdote. There was a hearing for the ordinance in March. A lot of people showed up for that one day. 2 weeks later, no one was there. It was me and one other resident. And guess who showed up? The developer. HCI showed up and had a 45-minute conversation with the Board of Supervisors of South Hanover. We had no idea they were going to be on there. It was not on the agenda. It was just this little thing on the solicitors. And it was me and one other resident. And it was like, we didn't even think to film it. We didn't, and we're sitting there and we got out of the meeting. We're like, no one knows that they were there. We have to be consistent. They will wait for us to go to sleep. And that might be that you say, I can go to one meeting a month. That's enough. You don't have to be at every single one. If everyone comes to one meeting a month in this room, that is way more than they ever expect. It's usually 3 people from the public in these meetings, to be quite honest. The Hummelstown Sun fortunately reports on the borough, and well, they need people to be there to record what's happening. So they're not like really interested in coming unless there's something happening. They have been at the bigger meetings, they have been, but we need to be at every meeting.
Yeah, guys, we're taking questions the whole rest of the time, so no rush to shout out.
I just have a question.
Yes. You've had your hand up a long time.
Yeah, it's just a simple question. Why the big push to have data centers everywhere?
Sure.
Don't we have enough already? We have probably almost 100 to 200 in Pennsylvania. Why do we need so many?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. And for everybody who couldn't hear, the question was, why the big push to build data centers everywhere? Simply put, they're being constructed because there is an AI bubble and people want to be the people to build data centers so that they can get tenants in so that they can profit off these AI companies who need to run data centers 24/7. In Pennsylvania, there are really 3 different kinds of business entities building data centers. There are tech company related ones. So there's one north of here that is being built for Amazon. There are data centers being built by fossil fuel companies. Some of you might have heard of Homer City, which is going to be a mammoth natural gas plant co-located to power a data center. And honestly, they've only even filed plans for the natural gas plant, and they maybe don't even care to build a data center. The third category of business entity, and there are a lot of the people building them in this region, are real estate development companies. So the people building Middlesex, it's a company called AREP, American Real Estate Partners. They're essentially an institutional fund manager out of Virginia. They pensions give them big pots of money and they pay them an income out of office park rentals. Well, they've decided to wade into the data center game. So all of these different businesses are rushing to try to get to market first so they can capture some of that money. And that's really, maybe some of these companies want to power flock cameras, whatever, but honestly, it's just a big speculative gold rush. Does anybody want to add anything? And so, gentlemen in the back.
Number one, Pennsylvania was talking a lot about, we're going to remove this tax incentive for the data centers. Well, last time I heard, gee, it's still there. So there's one big reason that they want to come here. Right? Tax incentive. Secondly, the fact that we have big data centers just under construction right around us. For example, in Middletown, we had a hyperscale, 200 megawatt Google we proposed. We have in Harrisburg, it's under construction, 150 megawatt hyperscale. Cyrus 1 has a 14 megawatt. That's nothing. In Carlisle, we have a hyperscale.
Sir, what is the question?
Okay. The question is, why don't we lean on the representatives that talk the talk but didn't walk the walk about pulling the tax incentive? Right?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. I'm going to answer that from my perspective as a representative of the stewards of Cumberland County, not representing anybody else here. Yes?
May I ask or add one more thing?
Sure.
Perhaps I missed that since I was a few minutes late.
You're fine. No. That's a really good question.
But the developer had announced they were suspending the action towards Southampton as of this afternoon. Or maybe that's you.
Friday.
As of Friday, and we addressed that part. So the question.
That was as of this afternoon.
So it happened Friday. Penn Live is just reporting as of today. So the specific question was why was about the tax, specifically the tax break that has been given to data center developers, and why don't we pressure our state representatives about it? Because you might have seen a lot of reporting that they got rid of that tax break. So I'm going to answer this from the perspective of stewards of Cumberland County. So the specific tax break is something that Josh Shapiro put forth and did, and it has been voted down. I don't actually know that the specific legislation has gone all the way through and has been signed, which is why that tax break still exists. You're going to see a lot of mailers from elected officials about how they voted against this data center tax break, because people in both parties, Republicans and Democrats, have gotten their polling back, and they know that this issue is a loser and it's killing them. And so they all want to be able to say, we voted to hold the developers accountable, we aren't going to let them push us around, but they're actually going to give them a bigger tax credit when they vote the grid standards through. So previously it was like it was a tax credit on, and I might get the details slightly wrong because I'm not a policy guy, but it was essentially a tax like waiver on sales and use tax for stuff they were purchasing for these facilities. Now they're getting a bigger, more robust, more encompassing sales and use tax credit. So they are not paying, instead of not paying taxes on, I want to say it was the computer equipment initially, now they're not paying sales and use tax on anything they're purchasing for the entire thing. Now, that is not online until the budget season fighting is over, and I don't have the best handle on what that looks like, but the reality is, at the state level, advocacy around this issue is being handled almost exclusively by legacy environmental organizations like Pit Future, Conservation Voters, Food and Water Watch, the Clean Air Board. And these organizations are well-meaning, but they just don't have the resources or the heft or the ability to make the legislators do anything. So it's kind of up to everybody who is concerned about this issue to not just be getting organized to protect your home. That's obviously priority one, is protecting your home with the best ordinances that you can get in place. But honestly, everybody needs to be pushing their legislators constantly. We need to be scourging them about this because they are all afraid to anger, in both parties, people are afraid to anger leadership on either side. And there are good Dems and there are good Republicans fighting in the state legislature about this. And I'm, speaking exclusively as one of the stewards when I say, hammer your reps 24/7 about this. I'm happy to talk to you in the parking lot about this afterwards. Do any of you want to? Okay. Miss.
My question has to do specifically with South Hanover and the zoning, particularly this overlay. I understand the zoning as it regards to the Hudson Supply parcel, but how did this overlay come to be proposed that includes residential districts? Does the developer already own those properties? And why would South Hanover expand the ability to put data centers in a residential area and not forced? And I keep looking at this, I read the notes and I try to find out what's going on, and I've never seen any answers to why we are now. We're all wondering that.
The question was about why is the overlay outside of the industrial zone?
So the developer has all of these parcels under contract, but they're kind of waiting until the zoning is approved to actually go through and make the purchase. But right now, they have the right to purchase all of these pieces. So they came in and said, we want to put initially warehouses in the industrial zone. But then they said, well, if we move them a little bit away, maybe you can add in some more of those pieces. So then they started talking about a zoning swap. Well, as it went further, they added the residential parcels, and initially it was 7 of them. With a lot of pushback from the community, it was reduced to only 5 parcels. We have asked for the last at least 4 months why those parcels were added, who added them, and when they were added, and we have not gotten an answer. The last answer we got was, we don't know. So if they don't know, We don't know. And so, and that's one thing we're pushing on, because if they don't know why those parcels are in there, they shouldn't be in there.
Was the zoning board that said that, you don't know?
The Board of Supervisors.
So Board of Supervisors alleges that these parcels and the overlay, sounds like a good video to watch. So again, the initial overlay parcel included, the initial ordinance included not only this land that is currently zoned as industrial, it included land that is zoned as agricultural or residential. And the Board of Supervisors has represented to us, oh, that's been in there the whole time, but they can't tell us why those parcels are in there, and they can't or won't. But right now they're saying, we don't know how they got in there, and we don't know why they're in there, but they've been in there from the beginning, which, as Marianne said, is not a good reason to have them in there. So that's a good thing to show up to these Board of Supervisors meetings and say, and the more people say it, the more pressure is applied. So you can absolutely show up and say, I too want to know where these parcels have come from. Like, that is a good thing to come and show up and say. So yeah, you can write an email or a letter to the Board of Supervisors. Yeah, but yeah, we don't know. And the Board of Supervisors alleges that they don't know either. Is that an acceptable response from your elected officials?
No.
Okay, yeah, so that's what we're looking for, some answers.
I assume you did a parcel search to see who owns those.
Yeah, Hanover does. The developer owns those parcels.
Prior.
Not yet, it's in escrow, or
Yeah.
whatever.
They have
I know
it.
he's an escrow on the passes, but who owned them prior to the development? And is waiting for this.
It's a majority of
That's
Muma.
a parcel.
Pensy Supply. Pensy Supply owns the industrial parcel, and I don't know if it's called Muma or Mama Realty owns a majority of the other ones. I think that there's like a farmhouse right in the middle that an individual owns, and I'm sure after he saw what was happening, I wouldn't want to live there either in the middle of it. But it's not individual owners, it's more business owners.
Gentleman in the blue shirt. Sir, I'm gonna stop you. Please don't play a video.
Okay, well, I live in 1,000 yards Circle Drive. And I'd like to know, because of this map, we talk about how you're gonna hear the data center. There's probably between 80 to 100 acre, maybe more, lake. I live on the creek. Everything is magnified with water. Water does not absorb sound like trees and fields and so forth. So we're proposing building a data center which would be just like a megaphone right towards Hummelstown, right towards Circle Drive, right towards the center of town. So somebody should be an audio specialist, know how much magnification of this sound is going to come off of that huge lake, bounce down, come off of the creek. I can hear people floating down the creek, and I can hear the conversations. And my house is about 100 yards up above the creek. So that is another big concern I haven't heard anybody talk about, but magnification potential, not potential, but physics tells us that it's going to reflect off that water. We've got a huge lake there in addition to the creek. That's a big concern everybody should be aware of. And if you haven't listened to a video, it is a screeching mess. And the company will pay fines to go above the decibel level. And if you don't like it, you'll be happy to buy your property.
Yes.
So that's just an example, one example of a video. But there's lots of videos out there. You haven't listened to it, you don't want to hear it. And it's 24/7. There's never a break.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really excellent point, and I'm going to use this as a second to talk about the acoustics of these. You'll sometimes hear developers or municipal attorneys. The solicitor for Swatara Township repeated this at a meeting I was at once. where they say 60 decibels is the sound of a regular conversation. And so it's okay for data centers to sound at 60 decibels. Now, a regular conversation, the way that sound looks, if you were to draw it, is like this. So 60 decibels might be the high point, where you say something really excited, you laugh in response to something your friend says. But what these data centers are is just a flat drone. So the auditory floor is raised. So whatever decibels that you're regulating, you're not talking about something that hits it incrementally, once every couple of minutes. You're talking about a drone at this level, and it's really powerful. And we should all sincerely, not in this meeting, but after this, listen. Go to YouTube and find a video of one of these data centers operating. And it's very, very difficult at the municipal level to regulate acoustics in the event of an emergency. So all over the place, you see sound cards, whatever the sound limits are suspended during emergency times to allow them to run those generators. And they define what an emergency is in many instances. And it might seem natural to assume that they're only going to run the generators when the power's out, but they might be deciding to run those generators when, if you don't define it otherwise, the electrical rate jumps for them. They might decide it's actually cheaper for us to use diesel right now. Not that that's very likely with our current price environment, but it's important to keep in mind the noise for these things is constant, and it's oppressive and it's bad. And I don't know anybody.
I just want to add that I don't believe that's been mentioned to any borough elected official, and so this is why we need more. I never would have considered that. I really urge you to go speak at council about that and speak to the mayor. I don't understand all of the acoustics, but that's the kind of information that more people being informed helps us really be like, you guys have to pay attention to this. It might not be your jurisdiction, but if it's going to be like a loudspeaker coming across the floor into the borough, that changes the character of our community. And that is the thing that whether we have jurisdiction or not, it changes our community fundamentally. And so please share that with council and with the mayor, because that's an important piece of information.
Yes.
The mayor should know what it is, because he lives
I don't know if you have to. Well,
yeah, he did. I live just as he said he did. He knows what it is, but he lives it. But the biggest difference between the car and what we're talking about now, every talk about it, everything we heard. So that was why we were open. This is not what everything happened.
Yes.
I live on my house, and we find about peace. And it wasn't that bad, because like I said, it wasn't every second. It wasn't a truck every second. Yes, they bomb, they dynamite it, and so they would blow a whistle, and they would go through the middle, when it was going to happen. And if you went to your basement, you felt it.
And the comment for those who couldn't hear was just
And you can hear that in Hummelstown.
yes, was just that the mayor should know better because he has lived near that quarry, and so he knows what the acoustics are and the noise that come out of that quarry at peak hours. And something like this development is going to be as noisy as the quarry was at peak hours, but 24/7. Is that the substance?
And kind of straightforward. And I did say to someone, I don't think you should do that. You shouldn't have done that. And I wish we never come back.
Yeah, that's a very powerful comment.
The sound issue and the amphitheater effect has been broached with the mayor. I had a meeting with him about a week ago and brought it up.
Yep, 4 people.
Yeah.
Yep, and the more you want to talk to your mayor and to the board of supervisors of South Hanover or to Hummelstown, just because one person has maybe covered it, it doesn't mean that they've heard it. The more constituents they hear it from, the more prone they are to action.
In one of the council meetings, they told me that only 10 people in the borough care about the data center, and they can't spend the money of 5,000 taxpayers because 10 people cared. And so then over 100 people came to the next meeting. So you actually being there makes a huge difference in them being like, oh, it's not. Brubaker, I think, regretted that comment the second it came out of his, well, not the second, I think once it made it onto Facebook. But it really, when they think that it's the same people that are saying it, having more voices really impacts them.
Sir.
I have a question basically that you started to answer. Data centers are built obviously for various companies to use their facilities. Do we know specifically what company is wanting to use this particular data center? Or is this one that where they're just going to perhaps sell their service to whoever? Because I was wondering if there was some way we could use the company targeted that's going to use this facility to then put pressure on them. So, you know, it's sort of a consumer type of event where we can figure out who they are and then apply pressure that way.
That's a great question. For those who couldn't hear, is do we know who a prospective tenant would be? What tech company would be using this data center? And the answer is no. And if you go over to Cumberland County and you look at the very far along Middlesex campus that they're building, they won't tell us who's going to be there. And they say constantly, we know who the tenant is. We can't tell you, they haven't signed a lease. I mean, they're definitely going to be the tenant, but we're not going to tell you. And that's playing out everywhere. And you just won't know until it's much further along. But it's a really good question. Yes?
In all of the data that you put together, has anybody put any numbers together about the additional traffic that's going to come through the center of Hummelstown, under the underpass, and up Granby Road to get into this data center? So I'm assuming that's the main way to get into the building. And so that's, I mean, you got a one-lane underpass. Can you imagine what that's going to be if you're talking 175 people, employees, and even if they're in 2 shifts, that's half of that. Has that been brought up to Borough Hummelstown? Because it's going to affect them more than even South Hanover.
So
it's a little 2-lane road.
Yeah. So the question for those who couldn't hear was, has potential traffic generated by this data center been broached with the borough of Hummelstown specifically, because they will be most impacted by people driving through the little 2-lane road?
According to the plan that they've submitted, their primary access will be the Pensy Supply Road. They have a secondary access through Wagner Street, but that's currently not allowed in the zoning.
Where is the Pensy Supply Road?
It's off of 39. You know where the sign says Hershey Park Drive, where it says Pensy?
So Hershey wasn't allowing them to use that.
Hershey's not allowed. Hershey actually didn't say they weren't allowing them. Hershey required the developer to apply for a variance. The developer decided they didn't want to apply for a variance and so went to court. But they still could apply for a variance. But the variance that they were going to apply for would have only been for a warehouse. As we've seen, they've now shifted to using a data center. The other thing is, I'm not sure if Derry Township could prohibit them using the Pensy Supply Road for construction because it's a private access road. They can have restrictions on using it for an egress, but I'm not sure. We're trying to keep that protection of not allowing Wagner Street as an access point, and so hopefully we can do that. I can't imagine that the trucks required would be able to go through the tunnel in Hershey and Hummelstown, so I don't think that that'd be an issue. But if you do look at the plan, it is the Pensy Supply Road. It's the main point.
And interestingly, the borough has been using the warehouse possible traffic from the warehouse to say, see, the traffic from that would be worse, that's why a data center would be better at that site. So the traffic argument gets all whirly-gigged around, yeah.
Yes.
I did ask the borough, a meeting several months ago, about traffic going under the underpass on Hanover. And my comment was a little more like construction vehicles and big vehicles. And I did comment about that, and the response was a shrug. They're like, yes, so we know, they can't go under that underpass, yes, so we can't do anything about it. So that was the response from our council. That's one reason why we all need to go to those meetings. Even if you don't say anything, find somebody, go, they need to hear. Because, and I do know that they try to listen. They do. Maybe not real bigger when it's up for election or gets it. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that? Who? Oh, yeah. Oh.
The gentleman that's
Sorry, sir.
I like to look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay, there was proposals for two other sites within the 106. One was in Londonderry, and one was in Hospital. Are they still planning on putting those in? Because if they do, all these little circles don't mean a damn thing, because it all triangulates now. It's just like sheep. Sheep triangulate the area, you take all your business. Okay. If they're still on the table, I think that when you talk to each of the individual municipalities, you have to talk on a broader picture, because it's going to affect all of them.
Yeah.
And the Swat-Terra Creek is the megaphone. I live in South Point. I hear every train that goes through. I hear every whistle that goes through, and every concert that happens at the thing. So I know we're going to hear that.
Yeah, so the question was, are the two proposed data centers in Londonderry and High Spire, are they still happening? And, because, and I think the second part was kind of more of a comment. It was, we need to be thinking holistically about all of these facilities, because they're going to surround us, and there is a cumulative impact to these developments. And so I do not know the answer.
Swatera Township currently, actually, it might be tonight, was having a public hearing on their ordinance. The golf course has been sold, at the closing, the end of the season is October for the golf course. So they don't have an actual application. There is an ordinance that is not very protective. I agree with you. I would love to have a stewards of Dauphin County, like there is a stewards of Cumberland County, because this is a broader issue that, you're right, and this is why they go after us, right, is we're all in our little areas, and then you look around, you're like, holy cow, I'm within 5 miles of all of these sites. And so I don't know much about the Londonderry one, to be quite frank, because I've been keeping track of this one in Swatera. But you're totally right, and we need, if folks are interested in a broader conversation, email us. I already have a Dauphin County, Protect Dauphin County email too. We can start organizing at a county-wide level too, because that's where our power, we can build our power.
Because even like in the hotspot area, there's more people talking. But you have Swatera, Hospital, Londonderry, 3 Mile Island, and this. I'm moving, Jack.
One last question, maybe two. Oh, yes, you.
So I'm curious, who is on the zoning hearing board? Not by name, but are they just residents that volunteer? And if they are, what are their qualifications of being able to combat against the questions that your application is?
So the question was, what kind of individuals are on the zoning hearing board? Are they just residents? Do they have adequate expertise to ask developers, to really put their feet to the fire?
Good question. I don't know them all by name, and I do know that the one person who was being talked about, because as we talked about, the former attorney from McNeese recused himself, and I heard positive things about the woman who was coming in to head up the zoning board in terms of her acumen as an environmentalist and her experience in Pennsylvania. And she's an attorney, and I think Marianne has hypothesized, we think they have to be attorneys to be on the zoning.
Are they residents?
Hearing board. Yes.
They don't have to be attorneys, but I think they all are.
Okay, we're not sure, we don't know. We're not sure who's a resident, who's not. That's a good concern, though. I'm getting a thumbs up. Hillary is a resident. The one who will be heading the hearing is a resident. Here's what we're saying. So let's pretend you just asked your question. Oh my gosh, great question. Yes, they all have to be residents and they are all attorneys. We think. But they don't have to be attorneys, but they happen to be attorneys.
They're all qualified to answer the question if you pose to them. It's not just random, like I can be on the zoning hearing board.
You could.
Yes, you could.
You could. It's a volunteer role in every municipality.
Okay, but that's just to know that we're all competent, qualified.
That's why they employ solicitors to
Yeah, so
advise.
every zoning hearing board is a volunteer board. Every municipality has one. All zoning hearing boards have a solicitor, and they have their own solicitor distinct from the municipality solicitor in case the municipality disagrees or wants to seek party status at a hearing. They do not have to be attorneys. If all of them are attorneys in your case, you're in much better shape than many municipalities. I live in Carlisle in Cumberland County. Our zoning hearing board has not had to deal with data centers. Most of them are not land use or planning experts. They don't have a background in law. They're just concerned citizens. And so it is actually a really great sign that there are attorneys here. And so a final question, two more? Okay, two more. So I'm gonna ask you in the blue shirt and then you in the green back there.
I wanted to ask her to elaborate on what she means by they're trying to prevent them from being able to use Wagner, because that's literally in our backyard.
Yeah, great. What does it mean that they're trying to prevent the developers from using Wagner?
So the current zoning for the industrial area restricts any primary or secondary access through a residential area, which would be Wagner Street.
Sure is.
The overlay does not have that in there. We have brought it up several times, and that is one of the things that we are working towards having added, because we believe that the people who live there should be protected.
Okay.
But if that's a concern, and it should be, please come to the Board of Supervisors
I
meeting.
have been.
Okay, good. And the Planning Commission meetings.
I haven't been to the planning, but I've been at the other one.
Yeah, because that'll help, because I think I've been the only one that's been speaking about it. I don't live on Wagner, but I feel like, you already have that protection. The overlay should not take away any protections. It should only add to them.
That's very good information for me to know. Thank you very much.
There's been a number of comments about having the various townships possibly work together. Towards that end, are the Dalton County commissioners doing anything to set up a zoning block list of regulations?
And so the question for those who couldn't hear was, there's been a lot of conversation about getting the municipalities to work together to tackle this. Is there any conversation at the county level to address this issue?
Amber and I spoke with Commissioner Justin Douglas in June. He is aware of the situation. We have not updated him lately. The county has very limited ability zoning is really a municipal power. And so the way our county is set up, there are counties in Pennsylvania where zoning happens at the county level. Ours happens at the municipal level in Dauphin County. There is it's called a Tri-County Planning Commission. They have released a model ordinance. They released it in April. It has been shared with the township supervisors. And that's kind of the guidance that has been given. There's not much of a, from what I've seen from any of the county commissioners, our county commissioners, they don't really want to stick themselves in it because they don't have much power to regulate it.
And they have power to regulate what must be done for citizen safety and environment.
I would say that no. Our Pennsylvania state constitution, has a provision that we're supposed to have a nice protected environment. I'm gonna butcher. I don't know the language offhand. If you guys wanna, but in practice, government entities that don't have direct oversight or a direct pressure point, even if they can use their voice and make themselves heard and wield soft power, just want to remain silent because they don't want to create headaches for themselves. And the fact that Tri-County Planning has even taken steps to issue a model ordinance is infinitely better than what's going on in Cumberland County, where our county commissioners are actively calling around on behalf of data center developers. And this is something that has been substantiated through right-to-know requests. I'm happy to talk more about it afterwards. But they're doing what they can, it sounds like, and that's maybe not enough, and they could always speak out more, but that's better than what we're seeing in Cumberland.
Before we close out, I just wanted to thank the resident who helped coordinate all of this, Tamara. She rented the hall, the fire hall for this. It was made possible through her donation, so we really appreciate it, Tamara. Thank you.
Email, so that's kind of a wrap, folks. We would ask that any comments, questions, thoughts, concerns you have at